Hello, I'm David Mellor. I'm Head of Growth at STEAMhouse.
Hi, my name's Sophia Tarr. I'm the Business Partnerships Manager for STEAMhouse.
Have you ever wondered how you could really unlock those hidden gems within your business and how you could remove those little weaknesses, those little barriers, and in so doing, how you could really build a business that was resilient and also very valuable?
And then we're also going to be looking at your strengths and weaknesses. We're going to be looking at something called the Pestle Toolkit and also the business model canvas.
Also talk about how you can use other people to help. And in so doing, what we'll be looking to demonstrate is, as a result, you'll get a business that's far more resilient and will also be able to unlock that real value.
We really hope that you enjoy the masterclass. We promise to make it fun.
Thank you very much for inviting us to be here. It's an absolute privilege and an honour. So thank you all very much indeed. So what are we going to do today? If we can understand the business, we can create the maximum impact of that business. And Sophia and I are here to really sort of almost challenge you to look really impartially at your own business, to analyse, to understand your own business. And from that's where you can really build a business that has resilience and that has value. So, who am I to start off with? You met me yesterday, but a little bit more about myself. I mentioned yesterday that I'm Head of Growth at STEAMhouse. STEAMhouse is the Innovation Centre of Birmingham City University. And again, for those who might be new today, if you wonder where the word STEAM comes from, STEAM is where we take the A of art and add it to the science, technology, engineering and maths, the STEM subjects, to create a unique form of innovation, a really creative form of innovation. So that's who we are, that's where we're from. Myself, my own background, I've only actually been in universities for the last couple of years. Previous 30-some years, I spent in industry. And I have been working in corporates, I've worked in early stage businesses, I have been a founder, I have led a private equity backed management buyout, I've established a venture fund, I've been an angel investor. I put it all down to me being quite old, I think. But as a result, I've got a lot of experience in all of those different areas, and some of that is what I want to share today. But far more importantly is Sophia, so I'll let Sophia introduce herself.
Hi, Anna. So I'm Sophia Tarr. I'm the Business Partnerships Manager for STEAMhouse. And my background is not as extravagant as David's, but I come from a commercial background. And then I moved into overseeing light festivals. And also I worked on a big project with the City Council, which was around supporting the creative industry. So I funded anything from photography, film, dance, music, you name it. I had a massive budget to fund all these amazing entrepreneurs. So I enjoyed doing that. And then I went to become a freelancer, and then I've ended up working for Birmingham City University. So a very varied background, but one that I really cherish and really enjoy working with businesses.
Thanks, Sophia. So in terms of our plan, what we're going to start off with, as I say, is taking a really honest look at the business. How do we impartially assess our own business? What we're then going to do is discuss value, because part of the logic behind this is if we can understand where the strengths sit in our business, we should be able to unlock the value. But what do we actually mean by value? So we'll have a little think about that. We'll also talk about the flip side of that, and that's the weaknesses in business. But how can we use those weaknesses in particular to remove barriers? Then what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit more about the process of identifying strengths and weaknesses. How do we actually look at them? How do we analyse them? How can we see them? How can we use, most importantly, our peers to help you get? And that's going to be probably one of the most important areas for this, particularly for all of those of you on the cohort, because we'll explore the importance of peer-to-peer learning in unlocking the value of the business. So, taking an honest look at the business. I mean, we all know our own businesses, don't we? I mean, everybody knows their own business. Everybody in business, they know their own business backwards. It's our creation, it's our passion, it's part of us. It's our baby. Surely we know it. Well, actually, you'll be surprised. In a lot of instances, actually, we don't know our own business, and we don't see it through that impartial set of eyes. People tend to think, well, that's because in some ways we take an over-positive view. In fact, it's probably the opposite. Most people are probably a little bit too hard on themselves. So actually, they only see the negatives in their own business, and sometimes they don't see their own strengths. So actually learning to take an impartial perspective becomes really, really important. Why is that? Well, fundamentally, if you can properly see your business through an impartial lens, you can really build credibility. So credibility becomes really, really important, particularly when you're talking to investors, when you're talking to customers, when you're talking to your own staff. Because if you can be authentic and you can be realistic, and it was something we talk a lot on the cohort about authenticity, then actually it finds you an awful lot of credibility. It also means you get balance. So if you're able to give a balanced view of your business, then it means, again, that actually if you're trying to sell a positive of your business, if you've been a lot more realistic about some of the challenges you have in your business, you're more likely to find that people will take you seriously. So you build that sense of almost, if you like, authenticity, knowledge, credibility. It's really important. You're also going to be fair. All of you are leaders. You will probably grow into larger companies. If you, again, can take a realistic and impartial view of your own business, you will be fair to those people who work with them, because you will see that business through their eyes. And that's how you build an important culture within your business. Culture is really important in businesses. And probably the most important thing for me is that you use it as a basis for improvement. Honest feedback, honest impartiality really helps in understanding how a business can work backwards from its strengths and its weaknesses, how it can really move forward from there. I was lucky in a strange way in my main business, because we worked for a year to win a contract and we didn't win it. It was a big contract. It would have been with Airbus, because part of my background was in engineering logistics. It would have transformed the company. We lost the contract. However, we got such phenomenal feedback from Airbus, honest, impartial feedback, that we changed the business on the grounds of that. And our business rocketed from there and was a real success. So it does work. It can be tough, but it does work. And you'll find, actually, nobody's perfect. Some very big businesses have not seen their own strengths. And actually, although these examples might date me a little bit, you do see that some large organisations just didn't see the strengths in their own business. One of the classics, and again, probably this is one more for my generation, was Kodak. Kodak used to produce films for cameras in the old days when you had good filming. Most people don't appreciate that Kodak actually invented the digital camera, but they never saw the opportunity sitting within their own business. They actually thought it competed with their own business. So actually, they blanked it. They let other people work with it. And so you've always got to be careful as an entrepreneur that there isn't something magical in your business like that you're not in. Ditto BlackBerry. BlackBerry, again, in the old days, there would have been two phones on this table. There would have been a phone and there would have been an email connection device. BlackBerry let the world know, but they didn't use their market dominance. They didn't keep investing in technology, taken over by the smartphone revolution. Flip side, other organisations find it a real hidden gem because they look at their strengths and they see things that people don't even see. And it's a little bit more contemporary reference, you'd be delighted to know these next two. But Instagram, for instance, Instagram was actually a location sharing app. It wasn't actually about photo sharing. That was something that they developed en route. And they suddenly realised that was where the value, we'll talk about value, that was where the value in the market was. Slack, another one, obviously the workplace communication tool. Actually, they're a gaming company. But they had actually developed a really good internal communication system. So they flipped the whole business on its head because they saw the strength was actually in their operations. And again, we'll talk about that as we go forward. So there are real world opportunities. So what I was going to talk about is strengths, and I've often used the word value, but let's just take a moment to understand what does value mean? Because, as I say, you know your strengths, you really know what your value. But what's value in business terms? Is it just monetary? Well, if you look at a strict definition, and you look at in this instance, the Cambridge University Directory, what it actually says value is the importance or the worth of something. So it's quite interesting to look at that, because importance or worth, how we assess value, is very much dependent on the eyes of the individual. It depends on where the individual sees value. So value can be in a business, if you are looking at it from a monetary point of view. It can be value in the business if you're looking and saying, is this a business worth investing in? And as an investor, I've looked at that many times. It can be, and it most often is manifested when we talk about the valuation of the business, when someone is buying that business. But value can also be social value. So it can also be, is it a business that from you as a founder's perspective can make you happy? It can make a social difference, make the world a better place. Those are all legitimate definitions of value. And it's something that we ought to focus on. So when we start to look at those strengths in a business and trying to link strengths to value, that's the key thing. When we talk today, we'll look at the strengths of the business. Keep thinking and saying, how do I link that strength to a value? How does that actually make a difference to my business? And actually, is it just about money? Well, no, not necessarily. So the first thing we might look for is financial performance. So you might start by looking at the financial performance of the business, and you think about revenue growth, you think about profit and loss, and you think, yeah, okay, that's where my value is sitting. Well, actually, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Certainly if you're seeing it as a snapshot in time. Because what you might find, especially from a historical point of view, very many what are perceived as valuable businesses actually have never made a profit. In fact, if you're an early stage business, quite often that profitability is actually held back so that you're reinvesting within the business. And that's partly because, as we'll explore going forward, a lot of value is more associated with future value than present value. So don't judge on what you see today. It's what comes next. It's future value. What's more interesting is around customer perception and the power of your brand. That's where you really start to see some value starting to trigger, and often future value. Customer loyalty to a brand is a really powerful thing. And you'll find quite frequently, you see it a lot within the UK, where organisations, actually their brand is worth way, way more than their tangible assets. We've certainly seen it within the retail environment, where companies that used to have loads of shops on the high street have actually gone bust. But the one thing that they could sell was the value of their brand, their name they sold off, often to an online retailer, because the value was in the brand. So never lose sight of the potential value of the brand. And you might be building your brand quicker than you build your business. So it's always worth looking at. The other critical one, and again, this personally resonates with me, and I know it's something that Sophia talks a lot about, is your USP, your edge, your differentiator, and how you link that to a market position, and how you build those networks, those partnerships, that credibility within a marketplace. Because if you've got that really strong sectoral presence, actually, people will pay to get into that marketplace. Again, I was able to exit a business because we were an engineering logistics company. We were actually purchased by the largest UK-owned British logistics company. They purchased us because they were predominantly in retail logistics, and they could not get into engineering. They had no credibility. There was a lot of very specific accreditations and the like. More importantly, we had a market presence. And actually, they paid good money for that. So value can be in your market position. So don't forget about your market position. Intellectual property. Again, another really critical thing. IP, what does it do? In many ways, it secures that edge we've just been talking about. It actually proves that, yes, you do have that differentiator in the market, and you've got the right to use it. And so again, in an early stage business, and often a technology-based business, there's more value in the patents than there is in your business. So always keep a look at, and by the way, again, IP isn't just patents. A lot of it, again, relates to things like brand and whatever. So always be highly aware of the intellectual property that you're creating within your business. But always look at ways of protecting that where you can. It's a really important thing because it helps build that value. So again, one of the strengths that we might be looking at when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, maybe the fact that you've got some strong intellectual property there. So look after it. People. People buy from people. It's one of the advantages, but it's true. And actually, the people within a business are really significant. I was really surprised when we went for private equity funding and the private equity company were more focused on us, myself and the two guys who owned the business, than they were actually the business plan. Why was that? Because they invested in us. Their view was, actually, it's the people that are really important. People can make this work or people can break it. And so you will find sometimes where you have an incredibly skilled team. Sometimes the business model isn't necessarily working, but the team is so good, you might even carry an investor with you. What you certainly might be able to do is look at pivoting, but don't lose those people. So your value may be in those that are sitting alongside you. So never ever forget. Operations is a similar sort of thing as well. You know, we talked about Slack, for instance. They actually found an operational capability they've got. Actually, it was the value of investment. Now, this is a really interesting one when we get to growth, because a lot of value, and again, possibly more from a financial value, but just again, you can also sometimes see it from societal value as well, is in growth. The value of something is how valuable it will be, the worth of it going forward. Not today, but going forward. So your ability to grow is really key. So if you are rapidly growing, or you have really good traction. What do I mean by traction? It means that you're talking to some key industry partners, or you've got a real sort of interest base on, sort of whatever social media you're in or something like that. If you are getting traction, then actually you are indicating that you have future value. So again, when you're looking for your strengths, look in those sort of areas as well. And future value becomes at its most important in this final category. Now, this one means more to me than anyone else in the context of what we're talking about. Sorry, anything else in the context of what we're talking about today. And I think it should resonate with yourselves, because this is what's so wonderful about everybody sitting in the room today. And that's about innovation, creativity, and social impact. There is massive value in innovation. The reason behind the value sitting in innovation and creativity is because you become the pipeline for future ideas. A business that can create new ideas, that can be creative, that has an edge. Actually, your innovation and your creativity links to real value. Also, if you look from the social perspective, and if you have a positive social impact, that links to future value as well, very strongly. Because if you're not resource dependent in the same way that some organisations are, you've got future value. You are critically resilient. At the beginning, we talked about value. We also talked about resilience. But actually, creativity, innovation, social impact, that unlocks the value. And never forget, my sort of real key point about the whole perspective of value is that value should be seen through your lens. I know people will tell me that, businesses, the value of a business is the profit and loss. No, it's not. Not in my view. The value of a business is stakeholder value. It's what you set it up for and where you see that value. But obviously, we live in a real world as well, so you have to be aware of monetary value as well. But never forget, actually, value is seen through your lens. There's lots of positives there, but let's talk about the flip side of it. And weaknesses. And there will be weaknesses in the business. Every business has got weakness. Every business will always have a weakness to it. But the really interesting thing about weaknesses is if you identify your weaknesses, you have an opportunity to remove barriers. I'm a big believer that actually removing barriers in some ways is more important than actually just selling. Loads of people are absolutely brilliant at selling their business. They would continue selling and selling and selling and selling. It might not make your business grow. What will make your business grow is if you can take the barriers that are getting in the way of your business and you can move them or you can get around them. And understanding weaknesses is a great way of actually saying, okay, my weaknesses, actually, if I can understand these weaknesses, all these barriers that are getting in the way of my growth, I can change them. Now, there are two main categories to find about weaknesses. The first one's internal. So this is really around, your own business. Challenges in leadership, in people, in technology, like creativity, poor products, underfunding. Sounds like so many businesses that I've invested in, to be honest. The advantage, though, of all of those is that when you identify those weaknesses, a lot of them are in your giving. So a lot of them are internal, a lot of them are things that you can do something around. So you have a sense of power around those. So if you identify the weaknesses, you can address those weaknesses. The slightly harder one, and this will link to some of the things that Sophia's talking about later, is external barriers. External barriers can be a real challenge. And I appreciate particularly with some of the challenges within the global context and within the Argentinian context. Market conditions, political factors, legislation, they often require a different approach. So if your weaknesses are in relationship to global trade conditions, or if your weaknesses relate to some form of legislation, you can still get around them, but you tend to find that instead of cleanly removing the barrier that you might do on an internal, you have to go round it. And it's how you reinvent yourself to go around it. And Sophia will talk more about, how we identify those macro issues. So, how do we look at our own businesses? We said, right, okay, if you identify your strengths, we can help unlock value. And we've looked at all the different dimensions of value, what value might be. And it isn't just around the euro, the pound, the dollar, the peso. It isn't just financial. There's other lenses from that. We've also said if you identify your weaknesses, you can move barriers. You can be agile, fleet of foot, and the business can move on. But how do we do it? Easy said, oh yeah, you need to understand all this. Well, we've got 4 areas, and we'll have a quick look at them in a moment. There are many approaches. The first one's really just around making some time for self-reflection. Actually stop it for a minute. Now, that's going to be really difficult when we do this framework because everything is full on. But a bit of self-reflection can be really, really powerful. So can actually just tracking your successes, tracking those challenges you've had, just standing back from them. Sophia will take you through also looking at lots of tools and methodologies. So there are more structured ways we can do it. But more importantly, I would suggest, jumping to the end, might be also how do you do it with your peers? And bear in mind that one of the strongest advantages of the DAU cohort is that you are in a peer group. You are in a peer group of fantastic people. You also have fantastic people who are in the peer group the year before and the year before that, some of whom are here today. So actually, you're part of a team, a really good team, and it does make a big difference. So I'll just take you through the first one, I'll pass over to Sophia. So the first one really, which is about taking time for reflection and learning. As I say, start with yourself. Just take some time to think. You're all business leaders. You're all incredibly impressive. Being here and being selected in this cohort, you've done phenomenally well. You're all really, really brilliant. And we've got some people who are brilliant, like Carla in the front there, who've already proved that, that you can be successful as well. So, they are successful people. But schedule some time for reflection. Do take some proper time. Treat it just in the way that you would other work. Compare the business's performance with its aims, its objectives. Take some time, stop, think. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Be objective. Be really objective. Don't blame yourself, but don't avoid issues. And verify your findings with others. And more importantly, journal your findings. So that you can actually sit, look back in quiet time and say, what did I do right? What didn't work? And also the really important one is what may have worked, but things worked out differently. Doesn't mean it was wrong in the first place. But I'm going to pass to Sophia now, if that's all right. And Sophia will take us through the more structured route of using the methods and methodologies, and then take you through peer learning.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Some really useful insights there. And so I'm going to just expand a bit more on what David has said. So I'm going to discuss some of the various models that are available for you to use. But before I start that, I would like to say, and I think I mentioned it yesterday, that as a leader within your business or as a sole trader, it's really important that you have a strong and clear mindset. That's something that you really need to make sure that you spend time developing, and that will involve you being aware of your well-being as a leader, as a business owner. Your well-being is really key, because if you're ill, you're no good to anybody. So do spend time looking at your well-being and your mindset. But there are some tools that can help you along the way, and we believe that it's important to find the right tools. Don't follow what everyone's doing. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Just be honest with yourself. So at STEAMhouse, we have a number of different tools that we can use that are very flexible. But again, you need to find what works for you. So I often find with businesses, they will tend to copy people that are doing, for example, social media, because their friends or other businesses are doing every single platform in social media. They want to do the same. But actually, that might not be you. So if you're nervous about posting on LinkedIn or Instagram, and you post once every 6 months, what's the point of being on that platform? So, just think about what it is you want to kind of take forward, and look at what the right tools are for you. And I'm really glad to say that today we're going to be looking at some tools that we feel are quite important for you as a business to not only use, but keep revisiting. So I know that David's already touched on some elements of the SWOT analysis, which I'll go through: the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity and threats. But there's also the business model canvas, which I'll be going over, the pestle and the Porter's 5 forces as well. So these are all things that would be really useful for you to be aware of. So with the SWOT analysis, it's about you as a leader being honest with yourself. You're not stupid, women. You're not going to know all the areas that you need to know as a business. And you'd be really naive if you think you can answer everything. There might be a very small percentage of people in the world that can do that, but on the whole, we all need support. So, through using the SWOT analysis, and there's an example of that on the screen, it just allows you to look at where you can best vision your business going forward, and taking a look at yourself. So, look at what your strengths are. What are you good at? What's your business good at? What makes you unique? And celebrating that. Celebration is another important part. We're on this treadmill, we're running all the time. We forget to celebrate. Slow down, celebrate your strengths. But if you've got weaknesses as well, that's okay. But just be aware of what your weaknesses are, and don't bury your head in the sand and say, I'll do that another day. And that day ends up being a year or 2 years. Believe me, it can just escalate. But if you've got weaknesses, I'm sure there will be someone in the room, or family member, or another business or mentor that can support you on that. So just acknowledge that you've got that weakness, and then find a way of addressing that. Just don't bury your head in the sand. That's really clear. A lot of businesses do that. And I like to say, with every disaster, there are opportunities. There will be opportunities for all of you within your businesses. But again, you need to find time to identify what those opportunities are, and really push yourself as well. Really challenge yourself, constantly challenge yourself. Don't beat yourself up, there's a difference. Just challenge yourself. Think about where the opportunities are. And like I said, there are threats, but we're all going to be conscious of the threats that are out there. But if we can do a bit of research to understand what the threats are, be a bit more prepared, it's a lot easier. So it doesn't knock you off your bike effectively. So just try and keep an eye on what's happening out there in the market with other businesses. And, it all follows kind of track when I go through lots of the different toolkits that are available. But things like the SWOT analysis, don't just do it once and never revisit it. Because I would say that you probably need to do this once every 3 months. And it's important that you do it. If you work with a team, you do it as a team. You don't just do it individually, because your employees need to understand what the threats are for them as well as yourself as a leader. So please don't just think I'm gonna do it and I'm not gonna share it with the other colleagues. Perfect SWOT analysis when you all sit down and do it together. So remember to probably look at that going forward. Next one is the business model canvas. I really like this one. Because I find that a lot of businesses want to do a business plan. And I think what happens is, especially if you're not looking for, so business plan really useful if you're going for investments, because you have to have all those answers. But if you're not on that scale, don't give yourself a headache, because a business plan needs so much information. Whereas with the business model canvas, it just breaks it down into small chunks that are manageable chunks that you can work on your own or with your team. But again, it's something that if you employ, work on it as a team, or even if there's just 2 of you, sit down and use the business model canvas. So I'm just going to switch over to it so you can see what it looks like. And this is really useful because although it's numbered from 1 to 9, I'd go straight to number 4. Identify what your value proposition is. What are you providing for the customer that alleviates pain for them? Because that's the idea. You're coming up with an idea that is going to bring enjoyment or alleviate pain for that customer. Once you understand what that value proposition is, everything else falls into place. If you haven't got that, I think it's really difficult to move forward because you keep shifting all the time. So be clear about what your value proposition is, and then you can work on the other areas. So, I work with a lot of sole traders, and I say to them, well, who are your partners? And they will say to me, I don't have any partners because I work on my own. And I went, well, no, you do have partners because you're working with suppliers, you might be working with academics, you might be working with, funders. They are all part of the partners because you're working with them. So never see yourself, if you're sole traders, just being on your own. And it really frustrates me, especially if sole traders are maybe going for funding and they work with STEAMhouse and they don't put STEAMhouse as a partner. And I'm like, what are you doing? You spend most of your time at STEAMhouse, but you don't see us as a partner. So it's a missed trick, because actually if they put STEAMhouse on the application, it kind of helps a little bit. It's not guaranteed to be successful, but it shows that you're branching out, that it's not just you on your own. So, and the other things are, looking at what resources you have, finance. Again, a lot of sole traders do not have cash flow because they're so passionate about their business. They don't keep a record of their spend. We do need to keep that, I can't emphasize the importance of keeping a log of your expenditure and income. It's really important. And again, if you don't know how to do it, find somebody that does, because there will be someone out there. But it is one area, again, you can't ignore it. It won't go away. It's always going to be there. So if you haven't started, it's never too late, but don't ignore it, because you have to look at what your finances are going forward. Wonderful question. very current with what's happening in our world today. But again, it's about looking at the political, economical, social impact. We can't, as a business, some of these areas are going to affect you, and you have to be aware of what the trends are, what the obstacles are. Yes, we've got Trump, but like I said before, with every disaster, there's opportunities. So always look for the opportunities. Don't just give up at the first hurdle. And if you're not getting that inspiration working alone or with your colleagues, reach out to someone else, have a chat with your mentor or another business or your peer. Always just be honest and say, look, I find it really difficult to find these opportunities. And we do it at work. Sometimes you just can't think of an innovative idea, especially when you put on the spot sometimes. But, I'll say to my colleague all day, what can we do with this one? It's really challenging. Come on, give me some inspiration, just don't suffer in silence, which we do a lot. There's that's one thing I will say. Do not suffer in silence. You don't need to. A lot of you will be going through the same challenges. So just be honest, just reach out and say, I'm having a crap day today. I'm having a crap day, or I just can't think about something. I just need 10 minutes to just think about how I can move forward. And it really does help. But yeah, don't suffer in silence. But again, all these things are about encouraging micro thinking, and you have to keep revisiting. Don't complete something and just leave it on the shelf. And this is the toolkit that we have at STEAMhouse. We will be providing the link for the STEAMhouse toolkit because it's completely free. You can download it, and like I said, we've got quite a lot on the system. But just choose the ones that are relevant for you, that you feel comfortable using and taking forward.
We have Spanish versions as well of certain key ones, and we can put those on the. We'll be using them this afternoon.
Yes.
But we can also put them on the link.
Yeah. So we will be going into more detail later on with the cohort with some of these toolkits. But I'm just giving you a flavour of things that you need to start thinking about. And then there's the Quarters 5 thesis. So this again just really helps you to look at what the competitive market is for you as a business. And there are some things, there's 5 different areas that you'll need to start considering. And one of them is around the threat of new entrants. So, it might be that you want to avoid losing that customer. So you might need to reinvent your branding recognition. You might need to think about how you can add value so you don't lose your customer. So look at the customer loyalty side of it as well. And, what you want to do is deter your competitors from stealing your customers. So always be aware of things that you need to start thinking about. Don't be complacent. Always look at it from the customer's point of view. And possibly don't ask your mum, your sister, or your brother, because they'll all say, "Oh, it's wonderful, it's a great idea." But you need to go outside the box a bit and just invite people that will challenge you, not people that will just nod like a nodding dog and say, "Oh, it's wonderful." You need people that will challenge you, but are positive. You don't need people that are challenging but really negative. You don't want to surround yourself with people like that. Challenge, but to find a solution. So I've been described as disruptive in the past, and I say I'll wear that title because I always try and find a solution. I don't just disrupt for the sake of it, because I want to find a solution to it. So yeah, be careful who you surround yourself with, but it's important that you do. And then the other area is around the buying powers. The bargaining powers of buyers. So again, it's about looking at adding additional value. It's about looking at what the benefits are to customers as well. How are you, again, going to entice them? And also making sure that you don't lose that customer again to another brand because you haven't reinvented the wheel or you haven't improved what you've done. So bear that in mind. And then the other area is effective substitution. So again, you need to be ahead of the ball. You need to invest in research. Do not emphasize the importance of research that needs to be done. So often we do a bit of research and you find the answer, and then the research stops. Keep it going, because our platforms are changing. The world's changing so rapidly. I remember I had an SME came to me and she was asking my advice about her product, and it was a shoe. And she said, "Oh, can you give me some advice? What do I do with this?" And I said, "Well, where's the product?" And she went, "Well, I haven't bought it because I don't want you to steal my idea, and I don't want people to see the idea." And I was like, well, by the time you're prepared to share, I can assure you somebody will be doing that, because if you're not letting us see what the product is that we can advise you, there's no scope for development. And she did bring the product in and she did go to market. And, I was just showing her that you can't, yes, there's always that possibility that someone might try to copy you, but I believe that if you put so much work into the product and you know your business really well, you've got a head start. It's a different offering that they will have, even if they do copy you. So don't be fearful of things like that. Just go for it and do the best you can. And then there's the bargaining power of suppliers. So, it's about looking at strategic and negotiating sales. Exactly. So challenging those suppliers. Don't feel that you can't question them as well. You are a business, they want your business. So make sure that you believe in what you're doing, because sometimes you can go there on the back foot and you shouldn't. You should always feel confident about what you're doing and know that you do it really well and no one else can do it like you. So be confident about that. And then the last one is competitive rivalry. Again, about making sure that you're agile with your business and being able to quickly adapt to the market, that the changes are happening. Don't be stuck. If you know something needs a bit of changing, just go for it sometimes. Don't hold back. Some of us don't like change, and I think deep down we know when we need to change something, but we just procrastinate. So sometimes just go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You'll kick yourself if you don't. But sometimes you just need to step back, revisit, and maybe make change or improve areas that you can. And then I'm going to talk about peer-to-peer learning. And I love peer-to-peer learning because, as David mentioned, you are part of a new cohort and you will be sharing similar examples. But to have a network that you can call upon is really, really powerful. And you should make sure that you take advantage of that. And, it's about making sure that you, like I said it here, the benefits of peer-to-peer learning is that most of it is done through talking to other people, because it's lived experience. So you're all going through the same thing, and it's a time to really draw upon each other and not be shy, not suffering in silence, because you'll get practical insights and also problem solving. Again, you don't need to share that problem hold that problem to yourself. Just share it. Just say to someone, actually, I can't, I need to find a supplier. It's amazing when you say something out loud. You might be sitting next to someone that knows somebody that can do that. And you just think, wow, we can be at meetings. And, someone will be sitting next to someone and they're just like, well, I've got a friend, I can't do it. I've got a friend, I know a business that does that. You create this little community, and that community is going to be really powerful. As David mentioned, last year's cohort is here today, and they are still talking to each other to make the most of the resources that you've got. Sometimes you don't need to go out of that circle, but you should always call on each other. It's a tough market out there. And sometimes I wonder why we want to be entrepreneurs, because it's not an easy road, you know, and it's very rare that people will be successful on the first hurdle. So the resilience that you will need to take you on this journey it's immense. It's immense. It's the best thing ever when people buy your products and when people talk about your work and everything. But you know, it's a tough place to be in. So build a community around you that can support you on that journey. And I'm just going to hand over to David now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophia. So, what have we learned? Well, most importantly, we've looked at our own businesses and we said, above all, let's stand back, let's be impartial, let's look at our businesses from a distance, impartially, and that way we really get a proper understanding of where we're strong and where we're weak. It gives us that real insight, that absolute gold dust information that enables us to make those really telling decisions, because being in business is all about decisions, and it enables you to make those decisions from a really valid, authentic standpoint. So you can understand your business, you can see where to go with the business, it delivers real insight. Knowing strengths, understanding our strengths, we've also identified helps you unlock the value of a business. So if you know when you're strong, you can link that to value. And that value can be interpreted in different ways. Yes, it can be monetary value, but it can also be around the brand, it can be around the social impact, the stakeholder value, and the future value. So it's quite a nuanced thing to look for, is value in a business. But there is a correlation to your strengths, and it's something we'll work on this afternoon. We've also looked at how we can identify our weaknesses. And again, what do we do with our weaknesses? We use it to remove barriers, the things that get in the way of our growth. So knowing our strengths unlocks value, knowing our weaknesses removes barriers. That's almost the simple mantra behind it. And we've talked about the methods. And there's certainly a lot of opportunities associated with methods. Your SWOT is very simple and it's easy to use. Your business model canvas is a nice, simple plan on a page where one thing affects the next thing and gives you a really clear focus on your value proposition and the effect that it has. Your pedestal is brilliant at putting you into context in that macro world. Your quarters by forces really gives you a positioning compared to your peers and the competition in the marketplace. But I do wonder, after all of this, that probably the most important thing that we can learn around it is learning from each other and learning from yourself. So the message really is around thinking, acting as a leader, taking some time and talking to your peers. And if you do that, then hopefully a little bit like Instagram, a little bit like Slack, you can start to unlock those hidden gems.